Jan Roger very kindly invited me to the shoot dinner afterwards. Nearly every village has its own hunt or chasse, its own shoot. They don't do things quite the same as they do in this country. They may slightly further north, but down here very few birds are put down, and they use both rifles and shotguns to surround an area and then work in almost like Indians around their wagons in a pack and just shoot what comes out. They also seem to be very protective about their hunting and the areas. I was invited this time, but in fact afterwards Jan Roger was very politely asked not to bring anybody else because he just wanted to keep it only to their own villages. It was very difficult even to get into the shooting in France at all. In the first 2 years there's a reciprocal arrangement where you can use the European licence and get one of theirs. They deliberately, I felt, delayed it so long that my licence went out of date in England, and then they wanted me to take the new French test to get the licence. As they don't do any of this in English, that was rather difficult, especially with the book. It's a shame really because they're cutting their own noses off to spite their own faces in the fact that they are gradually losing hunters, that there's fewer and fewer younger people going into it, and these hunts will gradually shut down unless they invite newcomers in or younger people in and help them more. Nonetheless, like the old wine growing, it was nice to see these traditional sports still going and things happening, even though, as I say, with the wine growing, we shall see later on, the vineyards, many of them are gradually closing down as the old paysans gradually die off. They even had their own wine labelled up. Because I can't do long walks or have mobility problems, Jan Roger very kindly invited me just to go for a short distance with him from the car, and he'd very interestingly set up the birds. He'd found a way, traditional way of putting pheasants into cover with their head under the wings, and they would stay there. So his dog would then go in and flush them out. We knew exactly where they were going to be. Not quite the sporting thing we do here, but there we go. And the parties formed smaller groups who went out and foraged around, or in some cases, as we're going here, the groups got together and encircled an area and gradually worked their way in, and were quite successful in that way with the deer and occasionally a boar. Because of this method of hunting, it was very like America in some ways, in that everybody would wear red, either a hat or a coat, to ensure their safety.
Bon, mais laisse-le là, Julien.
Oh!
The seasons often seem to pull together, the season coming for the hunting, and then the mushrooms came at the same time. And here you can see I found a nice big Cepes, and you could also buy those things in the markets because the French local people would make use of that. They go out and collect these things as well and bring them into the markets. Of course they were much more expensive that way. It was far better to go and collect your own as here. We'll see this in more detail, but if a tree came past the Paradou, I had to get out in the boat fairly quickly, drag it in, wait for the water to bring it up to the lawn, and as the water went out, left the log behind. I could then slice it up very easily with my electric chainsaw, and later on had help to move and to carry them and to split them. By now in the hall we'd managed to finish off the bar area and the dining area for the guests. I had my big fish tank there and my collections of butterflies and so on and stuffed animals, and I also had a workshop just behind here so I could look out across that. It was a good studio area, nice place to paint in, nice and cosy and warm. By now the swimming pool was also about ready. We'd put the liner in, we've got the steps in. It was a bit of a nuisance with the leaves, which would fill it quite a lot, and I had to keep clearing those out. Here you see the pool being filled for its first time, the new steps in. And later the homemade solar panel made quite a difference as well. It's a very simple system. The only thing was, being brick lined in concrete, it was extremely cold, and if the water was warmed up it soon cooled down again. But as the summers were extremely hot, it was very, very welcome, and although it was cold to get in, very refreshing once you were in. Very basic and perhaps a little bit crude and slightly Romanesque. But everything was done on a shoestring budget because I didn't have much money. So to have all these luxuries in such a wonderful place, we managed to do it with very little finance. Before I got my larger hull, my larger boat to carry more people in, I was just using my small 12-foot craft, had my fish finder there, and it was quite interesting to go and watch the bottom all the way up the river, see where the fish stocks were lying and so on. Of course we had wonderful fishing there, everything from barbel, tench, zander, chub, perch, roach, and the big silura, of course, the catfish. I could get my boat right up to a stang under the bridge and more up above. We did this with the larger boat later as well, taking small trips of friends and people that visited. There were just so many wonderful places to visit, all these lovely medieval villages in the hills, in the mountains, down in the valleys, all the way around us, these beautiful stone-built houses, and small shops, quaint streets. And as I've mentioned, in autumn they held many celebrations, feux d'artifice and fireworks, but also throughout the summer there would be meals organised in markets, there would be food markets, street markets and other special events, such as this one, where you could pay for tickets and just go and have a great time with all the local people. And there they're making aligot, which is a mixture of potato and cheese, and it comes out like a rubber consistency. You actually have to cut it off as you spoon it out. Aligot was a local Aveyron delicacy, and you'll find it in nearly all the cafes and hotels being offered there as you go through. In fact, many of our clients and the walkers that came through were so tired of having it at all the Chambre d'Hôtes, they were so pleased to get some good home cooking, English cooking after all of that. It's traditional in that it was made of some of the cheaper items over winter for the peasants, and potatoes and the waste milk to make the cheese. My friend Marcelo lived just above me in Carmarans in the hamlet, was always welcome, and he always welcomed me up there. In this case my two girls visited. We went up there and had a bite to eat with him. Beautiful old house, very traditional. The cobwebs must have been 200 years old alone in the place. It was full of antiques which he didn't, I think, really appreciate or know what they even were. But what a wonderful way of life, what a traditional way to be. He knew all the woodland tricks, he knew where to get the fruits and the nuts and so on, and lived on almost a subsistence. He would even eat nettles and clean his pans with nettles rather than use chemicals and so on. Wonderful person and very inventive.
that, cut your circle. That should be the best thing.
Good Marcel special knife.
So if you prefer some cheese or great.
I have an interest in traditional Irish music. I have made borans and I play the whistles and the overton. Not well, but just for fun. And so it was very interesting to me to find a music festival in the area where the French musicians got together with their cabriolets and their squeeze boxes and so on. And not only that, but they allowed me to join in, and it was quite fun playing the boran with them. I actually was invited to go and play in a dance later on with the boran. Although they probably would not like me saying this, I did find the music a little bit Germanic. It thumped out at quite a slow rate, and I had to hold back. They actually asked me to slow down a bit, as the Irish rated music on the reels and jigs is a little bit faster.
Just under £30.
Mark continued to stay and catch big fish in the area. He was an expert carpist and that was his life. I called him a carp tramp. The builders continued with their work and were now removing all of the panels from the side of the building which we burnt and building up with breeze block totally to the roof, which not only was much more weatherproof because a little bit of flooding from the road used to get in onto the floor and so on, but now made it much warmer and cosier, and we could start to decorate the place properly and build some chambres and make the place habitable. As I say, I used to burn most of the rubbish, and I talked about the river washing away the debris or just the ash because it was all burnt out. But you see how the water comes right up. It would come up 10 or 15 foot and down every day, depending on the floods as well. Here you see it at one of its highest levels, coming about halfway up the garden, but it would never come higher than this. By now it was important to have all our wood cut and the stocks ready, because we go through an awful lot through the winter. We had it burning day and night a lot of the time. These pillars that I set here for the veranda or the terrace I picked up from a friend further south who invited me across and had them spare. They were terracotta and rather nice, and I made some concrete beams to go across them later for safety. Then once again the seasons went full circle and the snow came back, and we went to visit the mountains and look at the ski slopes. I took some friends up there to ski and enjoyed filming that. With winter over, through spring into summer again, we're looking at the gardens, and here you see I've reversed the way that everything is planted so that it's now at right angles to the sun and the sun isn't burning it all off. We had some lovely crops there, the sweet corn here and the runner beans going. The French had very different ways of planting. They didn't often plant parsnips at all, and they thought that maize was only meant for animals or sweet corn, and they'd be very offended if they were served it. I remember hearing some friends who once served some sweet corn, and the guests walked out, quite offended by the fact that they were being fed stuff that they thought only fit for animals. Quite strange ways. In fact, their ways on eating are quite different to ours totally. When invited at Christmas with French friends, they nibbled different foods of totally different types all through the day without having one main meal to sit down to. And there was no real rhyme nor reason to what they were having one thing before another. We had some huge storms in the mountains there, the wind blowing through, the rain coming down, crashing. Often the power would come out, and if trees came down like this, I had to be able to move them fairly quickly and have help, get my chainsaws out, and we'd have wood for our own use then, of course, as well. But generally speaking, in summertime, things are idyllic, as you see here. The lime trees out, the lawns all mown, birds singing, swimming pool there, just warm enough to use. It was absolutely fantastic. Before I came to France, I had this dream, this vision of building a totem pole of two hands welcoming in friendship anybody coming across the river. So I used one of these old telegraph poles and a piece of floating rope that came past to add to the top, and with a chainsaw carved my own totem pole to welcome guests there. Rather fun. I love nature and I love insects as well, and to see the butterflies on my new flowers and gardens and flower beds especially made for insects was wonderful. You even had scarce swallowtails there and ordinary swallowtails by the mass. Here we have a fritillary. A lady had come across from England to help join in with these activities and wanted to run the boating side and make a business there. In fact, later we found that wouldn't really be viable, but she did assist me in getting this new big boat across, which I fitted the electric engine onto. That was fantastic. Put the umbrellas on it, and then we could take trips out, or visitors or our friends and my family, such as my sister here with her sons. With the terrace at the back finished, we decided to build one at the front as well, because there was a wasted area for the breakfast area in front of the kitchen. And I built some framework around there to have vines growing up and wisteria growing all around that, which was very effective and almost took over after a while. To make access easier and for wheelchair users as well, we built a nice concrete ramp up to the main gallery doors, which were now double doors. This door at the end was for the chambres. The gardens around both the gallery doors and chambres were now well established, and we even had peaches on the peach tree. The grapes were fantastic all around the archway there. It gave me loads of space, a wonderful lifestyle and lots of places to hang my paintings, but there weren't many viewers, there weren't many customers. But this didn't matter. For me the main point was lifestyle. The whole reason for moving, the whole reason of existence there was this wonderful lifestyle, the space and the freedom. And the old traditions as well. The countryside was like being back a few hundred years ago in England. There you could just wander the woodland and help yourself to the fruits and the nuts and so on, and nobody would bother you. Fantastic. I built some basic chambres there, and this was the basic dining area and area for the art students to do their work as well, because I hoped to run courses there then. But the situation in England seemed to change, and this seemed to become less favourable, and I didn't get many clients at all. But again, it didn't really worry me, it was a shame. At a later date, when Rosie came along, we were to totally change this, take these bedrooms out, revamp the design, and make 4 really beautiful double ensuite bathrooms. This is my little storeroom for all my art stuff. I also managed to make myself a really nice little studio come workshop in that area in the hall. In my small house, bungalow, I only had one main bedroom, but this extra room here, which I use for my computer, could also be made into a single room. I spent a lot of my time there, especially in winters, because the double doors leading out to the patio and looking over the river were a fantastic view. I could sit at my computer and watch the scenery out there, the light changing, the moods, the atmospheres, the wildlife, all through the year. Here you see where the actual log burner finished up. We had to build a large chimney at the back with this as well, but it certainly was very, very efficient. These stairs I built from some of the leftover pieces of the oak planking used for the pontoon outside at the river. I like pine, don't like to overuse it, so a lot of it was used in the kitchen, but I also built in cupboards in the bedroom as well, in pine. I'm not over fond of cheese, but I do like a nice piece of cheddar, but I love the Roquefort cheese. So we took a trip to Roquefort and down to the Roquefort caves and were able to sample all of these various types of Roqueforts of the region. This trip this way also took me over the famous Millau Viaduct. Something else I hadn't really been aware of when coming over, and as a part of my own dreams, was that I'd hoped to go to evening institute classes myself and make friends and learn new skills, but also have people coming here and still do some of my demonstrations and painting courses. No, that doesn't happen. Their main interests in the country here are to play cards together occasionally at night, boules, have the odd dance, and go to the bar, and that's about it. There's very little other social life happening out here, and they aren't really prepared to come out to it. In summertime there are usually many festivals though, and there are firework festivals and quite a lot of other activities and markets going on throughout the summer period, but very little over winter. With the interior of the main house virtually completed, we were now able to continue through the gardens and especially start on the hall itself, emptying out the interior of the hall and starting to design and plan the bedrooms over there and the gallery areas. At least now I had warmth in the house and a proper bath and the facilities that one requires. Even with the help of my friend the builder, it was still hard to get things done as I wanted, and we had to sack another electrician who cost me more money than he should have done by putting the wrong fittings in, pushing the wrong directions for what I wanted from the gallery. Later on I had to have this completely replaced, as I did also with much of the chambres, the bedrooms in the gallery area, because planning and changes that we had to make later meant they had to be changed as well. Although things have become far more bureaucratic in the UK, they certainly invented it here. If you want to get anything done, it takes a long time, a lot of paperwork, and you have to be very sure of your case. Partly due to this, sometimes it can be quite expensive because you cannot get a straight answer from anybody. Everybody wants to pass the buck. Nobody wants to take responsibility. So you have to be very careful about fire regulations and so on. And of course, being English in a foreign country, the locals tend to think they can rip you off. I've known some very arrogant English who come across here feeling that they can rip the French peasants off and have them working for nothing, but oh no, the other way around. If they think they can take you for a ride, they will. I've had several locals ask me if I can help sell their houses, more expensive for them, to the English, because obviously they won't get the price from their own French peers here. I have one friend who was stopped by a French guy who came in front of him, stopped his car, had seen it English plates, and asked him if he wanted to buy his barn for sale. Another amusing byproduct of being a single Englishman here is the romantic side. Clearly, to meet a French lady, it's going to be much better to be able to speak French fluently, which I certainly can't do or couldn't do. A little better now, and only just. But I actually have Frenchmen coming to me saying, can I introduce them to a pretty English lady? Because in this country area, there are far more men than there are females. Planting the gardens also took much experimentation. Here you can see I've laid the gardens parallel with the sun, east to west. But in fact, I needed to lay them north to south because the sun was just so hot it was burning them off. North to south they were giving more protection to each other in rows. Being in a gorge or valley, it was also difficult for television reception, so I had 2 satellite dishes fitted. But unfortunately the trees were also blocking those, so we had some branches to cut away. Here the firm that came nearly killed themselves when sawing off a branch that came back onto the ladder. Unfortunately, I have to admit that they were an English firm, and they didn't do much good to my ladder either. Of course I haven't used them again, but I have found another English chap who's far, far better. At last the basic foundations of things are almost there. The gardens have taken shape and we're getting some very good vegetables. For me the gardens are just a large work of art because you're planning ahead as to where the colours and the shapes are going to go, and I'm also planting and planning my gardens in the view of an artist, that wherever I look or wherever artists that visit look, they can find a composition to draw and to paint and enjoy. Once we'd finished the basic building work and I was able to move inside, we moved the caravan outside lower down the garden on the right hand side.
Once that was done, then we moved it across to the left, and that place where the caravan was, we had turned into a vegetable garden. And I got a friend to help me build a dry stone wall there, which helped support the garden. I had the front wall of the new patio made into a double section so that I could plant tomatoes and other herbs along that in summertime. I had to order the pool liner from England in the end because the French couldn't provide what I wanted. Even then it got waylaid, and the liner that I had was sent to Italy and the Italian liner was sent to me, and I had to have them sent back. The Italian liner was far larger and I don't think arrived that year. Anyway, mine fitted in, and here we have a little plunge pool ready. The weather can actually get extremely hot here in the summertime, and the plunge pool then is very, very welcome. At last the final external work was being done. We could remove those horrible wooden panels and replace them with a nice concrete block, which we then rendered and coloured.
Pour the film.
I managed to get some traditional big roofing stones from up in the hills and use those for paving slabs in the garden. With the front patio finished, I decided to have a second patio built at the back as a breakfast patio. I fixed wires across the roof of this and then grew both kiwi and flowering vines at the sides, which by the year 2008 were making a very nice ceiling and shelter. I built another pathway through the top vegetable garden, and in fact later laid more accessible concrete slabs there for the new door to the chambres. Many of the fruit trees that I planted were now bearing very nice fruits, and here you see some of the peaches that we'd grown. Absolutely delicious. I did open the gallery that summer temporarily, but we still had a lot of work to do with both the lighting and actually finishing the ceiling. At that time I was still relying on my old stock of pottery from England because I wasn't able to get the kiln working. In fact, it wasn't until 2008 that we managed to get the kiln going. The power rating for the kiln was 240 volts and we actually drew 210 here, and with that and a few bits of refurbishment that the kiln required, plus a whole new lid, I had to buy all new elements and everything else, which cost over £300 for the elements and £300 for the lid. Quite expensive, but a new kiln would have been a lot more. Anyway, 2008, and as you'll see, we did manage to refire and start doing more new pottery. I did manage to build 3 very basic bedrooms, but the design wasn't good and I was running out of cash, so it wasn't until Rosie came that we were able to build some larger bedrooms, all en suite, much higher quality and of course now much more satisfactory. I brought a lot of stuff over from England, not only tools but also materials, and here you see the art store with many materials ready to use. If I had to move again, God knows how I'd move all of this stuff, and in fact if I moved it would be to downsize anyway. I'd have to choose just what of my life I'd want to take with me. So after all of this wasted effort, we had to completely redesign the bedrooms and even the small kitchen, and we decided not to have the kitchen up there at all, but to reuse the bar and refurbish that as both a bar and private kitchen and salon or lounge area for the guests. With the work finishing now in the main hall, the gallery and the chambres, it's clear that the interior decoration of the main living house, the accommodation, will need totally redecorating, especially with all of the wood smoke over the past 4 years. But this little house has turned out to be very cosy and comfortable, and certainly large enough for 2 people, but only just even then. With Patrick here as well now, he's fortunately decided to have the privacy of one of the 4th bedroom across in the gallery, which has turned out well for him and for us. We were thinking of having another bedroom built over the top of this one, but that would have been further expense, and we're not sure we'd get the money back in the end. And so in April of 2007, both Rosie and Patrick decided that Paradou and I were worth moving to and staying with. The last work to be done was by Rudy, our electrician and plumber, also a very interesting fisherman and quite a character. Unfortunately, he got divorced halfway through the work there, as had our builder as well. Seems to happen for us here. And the work took 3 times as long as it should have done. 3 weeks' work took about 3 months. The Chapel of Cadalmarans, one of the 7 hermitages of the diocese of the parish of St Michael, repaired in 1297. Cadalmarans or Carmarans is a dependent of the parish of Neyrac. The chapel was a ruin before 1730. The chapel is an oratorium of the arcade type, close to the road and 4 kilometres from Estang. The chapel was given to the commune of the Neyrac by Louis Gaultier, a notaire in Estang during the 50s. The name of Carmarans could originate from the Latin cadaver marans, literally the mourning corpse, giving credence to the following legend. The legend of Aveyron. Le Poix Trinquois and Le Capello de Duel, after a short distance on leaving Estang and travelling towards Entrailles, on the same riverside, you will find the remains of an old wall built on schist rock. These barely visible remains correspond with those which are visible on the opposite of the river and which are similar. One may recognise these remains in the country under the patois name of Le Poix Trinquois, which translates into the broken bridge. This remaining rock suggests that the bridge had one very high arch for the water to run under. There were smaller arches each side for floodwater to run under when the river was high. but there was no longer any trace of these. On the left bank, in the cracks of the rock where water has deposited soil, there grows a small periwinkle, the flower symbolising the memory of this story.
Espoir mêlé de crainte, ton père a vu toutes tes larmes, bras paternels qui enlacent, qui ont nourri ces fragiles pétales, beauté virginale en fleurs dans la prime jeunesse, fruit qu'il a protégé en ses paumes et amené à mûrir, petit fond de printemps courant et dansant, s'ébattant dans votre bonheur de vivre. Enfant innocente des chants gaéliques baignés de soleil, lumière d'été si dorée, jour paresseux baigné dans la joie insouciante des rêves de noces, il a pris ton sommeil et y a placé ses rêves. Les forces de la nature mêlaient vos âmes, vos destins devaient être unis. Maintenant, il craint mais espère, vigoureux enfant de France pressé d'aimer. Forces anciennes, patrie ancienne labourée par ses mains du passé, graines du temps lancées à la volée. C'est alors que l'ombre noire de la mort s'est immiscée et le noir a remplacé la lumière. La flamme qui brillait sur tout s'est éteinte. Le feu des passions assouvies, maintenant, froid comme la nuit. Son âme appelait en vain ses rêves vides, trouvait chaque jour plus long. Comme en transe, son esprit emplit des seuls tendres remords de ses souvenirs. Son joli corps gracieux à petits pas a dit adieu à l'hiver gris. Son esprit à peine éclairé, elle a plongé son regard au fond des eaux du passé. Il lui a fait signe d'approcher, de le rejoindre, lui sombre et froid, dans une ultime étreinte. Son chant si doux, si calme, si clair, a résonné dans le lointain de sa chute, maintenant retransmis par les mémoires passées. Un rossignol répète son appel.
When I first arrived in France 5 years ago, I found this beautiful ancient chapel just up the road from me. I knew there and then that I was destined to work within this chapel. Then I met Madame Francine Samper, who was working on the gardens. She's a wonderful character, and it was clear that we both had the same empathy towards the chapel. With her assistance, I gained permission from the Mairie of Le Nayrac, who owned the chapel, to begin work. Having planned out and cleaned parts of the walls, we first gave a coat of white plaster and then mixed local red ochre with the plaster to give a pink surround, then a coat of acrylic emulsion, and finally finished the paintings with acrylic paints. It was very important to consider the ambience of the chapel and not to make a modern painting, but a mélange, a mixture of the ancient and medieval with my own styles. I hope you enjoy sharing the creation of this project on this film.
Here I am in the little chapel at Carmarans, and as you can see, I've now finished the project. Although we would like to have a really beautiful stained glass window made yet, and hopefully I'll find somebody who might care enough to donate that in the future. I'm going to explore these various pictures with you and the walls and show you how the whole project was done. It's certainly been a very interesting project for me, a very lovely one and quite a spiritual one, working here, playing some music in the background as well. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it and hope you will enjoy seeing how this was created.
By continuing your walk down the valley or gorge, you pass through slopes covered with vines and chestnut groves until you arrive at the village of Carmarans. Just after the village and continuing to Untry, you will come to a small chapel. This is its history. The Lord of Estaing was very friendly with the Lord of Vallon, who lived in the valley of the River Trye nearby. The Lord of Vallon was widowed and had a young son. Having to go to war, this lord entrusted his son and servant to his friend, the Lord of Estaing. The Lord of Estaing had a daughter a little younger. The two children played and grew together until they became adolescent and felt a deep attraction to one another. However, the Lord of Estaing had plans to marry his daughter to a powerful lord of the vicinity, the Baron de Théniers, a hard and violent man. The girl, happy in the company of the Lord de Vallon, had wished to the contrary, and no wishes to marry the Baron de Théniers. The Baron de Théniers understood that the girl he desired was already in love with the young boy. He requested that the Lord of Estaing send the boy back to his home in Vallon. The youngsters made a tryst to always remain faithful and be together again. On the arranged day and hour, a light was to be placed at the top of a large tower. This would indicate there was no danger from any untoward plans the Baron may have. An indiscreet and corrupt maidservant of the girl was to inform the Baron de Théniers in this way. Knowing the day and the hour to which the young page was to come, the Lord of Théniers paid 6 good-for-nothings who in the darkness of night cut down the arch of the bridge which connected Estaing to the left bank. At the appointed time the young man arrived at Le Rouquet on the left bank, not far from the Estaing. In the night he did not see the abyss, and fell through the missing portion of the bridge and was drowned. His servant, not seeing him return, went the following day and searched. He saw the damage to the bridge and understood the possibility that the boy had fallen in, and alerted the Lord of Estaing and all the population. They searched along the river for the body of the young man. They found it opposite Montaigu, where the small boat, which they call in the region a neo-fuel, they succeeded in bringing back the body. During this time an investigation did not have any doubt that the author of the crime was the Baron de Théniers. At the request of the girl, the Lord of Estaing buried the young man at the place the corpse had been found along the lot, and built a tomb at that point, and made a chapel, and beside this chapel a lodge to house a hermit, whose mission would be to pray for the defunct and the 2 families of Estaing and of Vallon. The chapel was then named Le Capello Le Duel, the Vault of Mourning. The young girl, in her unhappiness, did not delay long in following her companion to the tomb. On the anniversary of the death of the 2 lovers, the fishermen of Estaing say they have seen a light rise in cloud above the large tower of the castle, and little by little take the shape of a woman in a long white clothing, joining hands with the sky. They say they have distinctly heard her call 3 times, Duel, 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 and then all disappears. When many times asked on the date of this apparition, the fishermen stated invariably, "It is with the rise of the white fish, occurring when the corn flowers." The 2 paintings I've done each side I've tried to represent in fact these 2 teenagers that were in love, the girl and the boy, although in fact I have no reference to work to for the portraits. So it's a little bit of a romantic theme, and it's also rather a romantic reaction from me, including the poems that I also wrote and the music I composed for this particular rather romantic tale. It's sad but romantic. In this larger painting here, you'll see I've actually made a painting of the whole of this area of the Gorge du Lot. Here we have the little village of Carmarans, opposite where I live. Here we have the little chapel here, with the new bridge over it. Originally there was another road down here, and this would have stood way above the water because the water was down this side. A barrage, a dam has been built since, much lower down, and this has raised the water level. And of course this is where the story originally is related to, where the young boy was washed up after his murder, and the father of the girl, the femme du lot, the girl who was in love with him, built this chapel that we've done this project in memory of him. And here we have the Chateau d'Estaing, where the girl came from, and the father's home, and the boy lived for a while with the girl, and that's where they fell in love. And again I've done a second picture of her, this time with her hair down and more relaxed, when she's in the countryside, in this case picking flowers, and her guardian angel. And over here the obvious picture of Adam and Eve, some of these relating to and taken from actual medieval paintings, and then linked with my own style and some of my own ideas to link with this story. This panel depicting the 7 deadly sins, and 2 devils at the bottom waiting for these sinners to drop in. Poems both in French and English. Here you see the French version, and I felt it only apt to put in these beautiful irises that surround the chapel as well. You note that I constantly use this theme of the nightingale as well, because I like to use, linked with this young lady, the daughter of the Lord of Estaing. These 3 pictures depicting 3 scenes from the Bible.
Lo Capello del Duol, la chapelle du deuil. Légende de l'Aveyron. Lupuon Trinca et Lo Capello del Duol. En partant d'Estaing vers Entrailles, si vous continuez votre route sur la même rive, à quelques centaines de mètres, vous trouverez les restes d'un vieux mur, bâti sur une roche schisteuse. Ces restes à peine visibles correspondent à ceux qui se trouvent de l'autre côté de la rivière et qui sont semblables. On désigne ces restes dans le pays sous le nom patois de Lupuon Trinca, qui se traduit par le pont casse ou détruit. Ce pont ne devait avoir qu'une arche très élevée, facilitant l'écoulement des eaux en temps ordinaire. Il devait y en avoir de plus petites sur les côtes où l'eau passait lors des crues qui se produisaient par les grandes pluies. Mais il n'en reste pas de traces. On voit sur la rive gauche, dans les fissures de cette roche où l'eau a déposé de la terre, grandir la petite pervenche, la fleur du souvenir. En poursuivant votre promenade, vous contournez un coteau couvert de vignes et de châtaigneraies et vous arrivez à une petite plaine où est situé le village de Carmaran. En continuant encore, vous trouverez une petite chapelle dont voici l'histoire. Le seigneur d'Estaing était très lié avec le seigneur de Vallon, dans la vallée de la Truyère. Celui-ci était veuf et avait un jeune fils. Contraint de partir à la guerre, ce seigneur confia son fils et le domestique de celui-ci à son ami le seigneur d'Estaing. Ce seigneur avait une fille un peu plus jeune. Les deux enfants jouèrent et grandirent ensemble, jusqu'au jour où, devenus adolescents, ils sentirent l'un pour l'autre une profonde attirance. Or, le seigneur d'Estaing projetait de marier sa fille à un puissant seigneur du voisinage, le baron de Tenières, un homme dur et violent. La jeune fille, heureuse dans la compagnie du jeune sire de Vallon, n'éprouvait au contraire que de l'aversion pour celui que son père lui destinait. Le baron de Tenières, comprenant que le cœur de la jeune fille était déjà pris, amena le seigneur d'Estaing à renvoyer chez lui, à l'Avalon, le jeune compagnon de sa fille. Les jeunes gens, en se séparant, jurèrent de se revoir. Au jour fixé, une lumière placée en haut de la tour indiquerait qu'il n'y avait point de danger. L'indiscrétion d'une servante mit, par l'intermédiaire de son serviteur, le baron de Tenières au courant. Connaissant le jour et l'heure à laquelle le jeune page devait venir, le seigneur de Tenières paya très largement 6 vauriens qui, par une nuit très obscure, abattirent l'arche principale du pont qui reliait Estaing à la rive gauche. À l'heure dite, le jeune homme arriva par la Rouquette, sur la rive gauche, non loin d'Estaing. Dans la nuit, il ne vit pas l'abîme qui s'ouvrait à la place du pont et se noya dans le gouffre. Son serviteur, ne le voyant pas revenir, alla le lendemain à sa rencontre. Il vit le pont brisé, comprit qu'il était sans doute tombé et vint alerter le seigneur d'Estaing et toute la population. On chercha le long de la rivière le corps du jeune homme. On finit par l'apercevoir en face de chemin de Montaigu, avec une petite barque que l'on appelle dans le pays un négo-fouol. On réussit à ramener le corps. Pendant ce temps-là, une brève enquête qui ne laissait aucun doute permit de découvrir l'auteur du crime, le baron de Tenières. À la demande de la jeune fille, le seigneur d'Estaing fit ensevelir le jeune homme au lieu où on l'avait sorti du Lot, et fit construire au-dessus de la tombe une chapelle et à côté un logement pour un ermite dont la mission serait de prier pour le défunt et les 2 familles d'Estaing et de Vallon. Cette chapelle est appelée depuis Lo Capello del Duol, la chapelle du deuil. La jeune fille ne tarda pas à suivre son compagnon dans la tombe. Le jour anniversaire de la mort des 2 amants, disent les pêcheurs d'Estaing, une légère nuée semblable à un brouillard s'élève au-dessus de la grande tour du château et prend peu à peu la forme d'une femme en longs vêtements blancs, les mains jointes, élevées vers le ciel, et l'on entend par 3 fois le cri parfaitement distinct « Duol, Duol, Duol » et tout disparaît. Ces pêcheurs, interrogés à plusieurs reprises sur la date de cette apparition, répondent invariablement « C'est à la montée du poisson blanc qui a lieu à la floraison du blé ».
The hopes within the fears, the tears, your father saw them all, paternal arms enfolding, holding fragile petals nurtured, blossoming virgin beauty of fresh youth, protecting in his palms the fruit he ripened and matured. Running, dancing foal of spring, revelled in your joy of life, innocent child of sunlit Gaelic fields, summer light so gold, hazy, lazy days of carefree joy in dreams to be a bride. He took your sleep, and in it placed his dreams. Nature's force entwined your souls in fate's decree embraced. How he feared yet hoped, strong youth of France on love's long lance, ancient forces, ancient lands, tilled by those hands of ages past, time seeds cast, as death's dark shadow pouncing fast, and in that moment darkness stole his light, the bright flame shared now lost, as passion's fire was quenched, now cold as night. Her soul called out to no reply, her empty dreams grew longer by each day, as in a trance her mind was fogged by nothing more than memory's sweet remorse. Her sylph-like body so refined, with gentle steps a curtsy now she bowed in winter's grey. The candle dim within her spirit's lamp, she looked down deep into the waters past. He beckoned her to come, to join him, dark and cold, embracing to the last. She sang a song so sweet, so calm, so clear, that echoes distant of her fall, now carried on from memories past, a nightingale repeats her call.